Hello, this is Robert Rickover. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. My guest is Imogen Ragone, an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. About 4 or 5 months ago, we did an interview, which I perhaps somewhat pompously titled A Simple Alexander Technique Self-Direction That Can Change Your Life. Um, and this is part two of that. The direction was is I'm not thinking, and I've been using it a lot, and I believe you've been using it quite a bit too.
Yeah, I've kind of been quite surprised how much I like and benefit from this direction or constructive thought or paradoxical direction,
It's kind of the
whatever you want to call it.
ultimate paradoxical
Mhm.
direction because you're
Yeah.
thinking, I'm not thinking. Um,
Mhm.
so Um, and it was basically it's a direction that takes advantage of your unconscious mind's bias towards your best interest. It wants to be helpful. And
Mhm.
I won't go into all the details of it, but I'll put a link to our interview before. But just to add to that a little bit, it came out of um, was related to certainly F.M. Alexander, the founder of the Alexander technique, being very concerned with what he called mind wandering. And if you have a copy of Constructive Conscious Control and look it up, and it's hyphenated in that book, there he goes on and on about it. And he sees it as a really bad trait and one which it leads to concentration, attempts to concentrate, which is a big no-no in the Alexander world. And really,
So it's like, don't let your mind wander, but don't concentrate.
well, if it's wandering, you try to hold on to the thought
Yes, exactly.
and
We're trying
that's
to
not going to
fix.
work either.
Mhm.
So um, that direction, I'm not thinking, we both found to be very useful in things like improving what you're doing during your day. But I asked the question in that first interview, which I did not do a good job of answering. I know you don't remember this, so I'll refresh
Well,
your
I do
mind.
now.
Yeah, you finally got it right. You asked, well, how is that a useful direction that would be helpful in achieving a state of being where your mind is not constrained, it's free to go wherever it wants, as kind of perhaps a little akin to meditating or just putting yourself in a state where something new could pop up.
I'm, I think I'm more, not really meditative, more that I'm just allowing my mind to go where it goes without any restriction.
Right,
And so
right.
that for some, I mean, not all day long, but there might be some usefulness in occasionally just seeing what comes up, not restricting, not forcing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um,
Meditation might not be the best. Uh,
I feel like maybe meditation could then lead to possibly being
mhm,
in sort of
mhm.
that sort of open
Right, right,
state, but not necessarily. That's not quite
right,
the same thing.
right. But that question has sort of gnawed away at me over the last
And
little while,
I just
and
let it go.
yeah, really, and because really being in that state can lead to really uh, amazing discoveries or insights. I mean, there's a famous example in actually in chemistry. A guy named a German chemist named August Kekuli. I don't know, may not be spelling that correctly. He was very interested in benzene, and but no one had figured out what the structure of it was like. It was in his back of his mind that this was a really important unanswered question, and the answer would kind of lead to the whole field of related to the whole field of organic chemistry. It was really a pretty important thing. And the story goes that in 1865, he's stepping off a tram. Some people say in London, I don't know what he was doing there. He steps off a tram onto the platform, and he suddenly gets an image of a snake's head biting its tail. And he immediately realizes that that's sort of the key to the benzene ring. It's not really a circle, it's like a ring, like a hexagram or something. But that got him, kind of took him directly to that discovery. And he was certainly not, probably, I'm assuming, not really thinking about benzene as he stepped off the tram. He's probably just wanting to make sure he doesn't trip, but there it is, and there are a lot of examples like that, people coming up with ideas that just pop out of nowhere and are quite important and interesting. So I've been thinking, okay, thinking something like I'm not thinking, which is you're doing that in order to do what you're already doing more effectively, easier, less stress, may not be applicable to the situation of specifically taking some time to just allow your mind to wander. And that kind of mind wandering would not be the harmful thing that Alexander is talking about, because he was talking about mind wandering that's taking you away from a direction you want to use.
Like distracted, when we're just we're
boring
distracted and
stuff.
thinking about this and this and this.
Yeah. I'm still angry at so-and-so for something he did last year, and whatever, and one of the things that I think is really nice about the direction is that it is a kind of a quality control mechanism. When you think I'm not thinking, your conscious mind will, because your conscious mind will help you drop the stuff that's useless and let the stuff that's useful be there. But in this case, you don't really want that kind of you don't really want quality control at all. You just want complete freedom of thought, and maybe something will pop into your head, and you don't want to try to improve things while you're doing that. You just want to let stuff go.
That's interesting, Robert, because paradoxically, I am curious whether the thought I'm not thinking could be useful in this, because it's that I'm not thinking in my usual way. I'm not forcing how I'm thinking. I do feel like when I use that direction, I become more open often.
I think if you,
and then who knows what then the subconscious will deliver to me,
right? Well,
but it's not for an extended period. I know what you mean. Yeah,
but you're probably not doing it in order to walk more easily or to have greater ease when you're sitting at the computer or things like that. Maybe
the I'm not thinking thought.
Well, that
Or
using not thinking as a way of just letting your mind go where it wants to go. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm not thinking would be good for that, but you seemed dubious several months ago.
Well, I've been using I'm not thinking a lot since
Uh-huh.
then, where I'd only kind of been playing with it for a week or so before our previous interview.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well,
and
maybe.
so I'm seeing maybe more potential for it than I did originally. Um, However, I do know that you have another possible uh, direction, right?
Well,
That
the direction that I thought might be an appropriate one for situations where you're not really focusing on a particular activity you're doing and want it to get better, but you're just maybe just resting, maybe on the way to falling asleep, who knows? Which would be exactly the opposite of what Alexander would like. Um, my mind's free to wander. There's mind wandering on steroids, right? Um, and I think that might be a very useful direction. I played around with it a little. I don't know whether you've had a chance to or not.
I have a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't quite sure of your intent with it, so I just
Uh,
kind of played with it at some different times. I've over the last couple of weeks had a lot of stuff going on in my family that has been dominant in
right,
my
right.
mind,
Uh-huh.
and the I'm not thinking one is lovely
Okay.
because it
Okay.
gives me and so maybe because of the situation I'm in at the moment, that my mind is free to wander didn't seem as helpful
You might
because
experiment with using it
but
as you're
I
falling off to sleep at night, or if you wake up in the night, you just, oh, my mind's free to wander. Um,
Mhm.
Anyway, that's really all I wanted to say that I
So
think
how have you been using my mind is
um,
free to wander?
the problem for me is that I tend to fall asleep pretty easily. So I can't say that like doing that has some brilliant insight has popped up in my brain for doing that. But anyway, it's just something to explore. And
It seems to me that the two thoughts could be almost two sides of the same thing, just
well,
a
I
different way of coming
that could
at
be.
it.
I was originally thinking maybe I'm not thinking would be a kind of a preliminary thought that might extend in time a bit, and then okay, and then I'm just going to let my mind do whatever it feels like for a while, as a
Mhm.
form almost of mental rest, maybe.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that. I felt like that I'm not thinking could be a precursor to kind of having a little bit more of a, I don't know, a blank slate or
Yeah, yeah,
before going into it. And then now my mind's free to wander wherever it will. And let's see what
yeah.
happens.
So
Mm.
that's really all I've got to say. Do you want to add anything to this?
I think I think so, but I am curious to play with it a bit more. I've heard of a practice. Um, I don't know where it came from, but some high achieving, high thinkers, but having kind of a time in the way that some people will have a meditation time, and maybe as well as, but they have like 20 minutes or half an hour where they just sit
See, I
and
think
let
that
their
would
mind
be
think.
I think
You
that would be a
know,
perfect time to use the direction.
mhm,
I'm free to let my mind wander or something along those lines. But
yeah.
you might even begin by saying, um, I'm not thinking, just to kind of
Mhm,
maybe clean out some of the stuff first. But then
mhm.
mainly, you're not trying to improve your physical functioning so much as just allowing your mind to recalibrate and maybe
I
who
would say
knows?
it's not a separate. Our physical functioning
Oh,
is
well,
not.
yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, you know, in
Because
the
if
Alexander
your
world,
mind is wandering freely and you're open, and
yeah, yeah.
I think there will be a physical
Oh, yes, there will be, but
expression of
maybe
that.
that's not your main
It's
goal.
not the
Put
main
it that
goal
way.
in that particular
You
situation.
know, in the
Got it.
Alexander world, you can always win an argument by saying, well, if it's affecting the mind, it's affecting the body,
Mhm.
and vice versa, which is true. But
Mhm.
sometimes you might have an emphasis on one more than the
A
other.
goal that's more to do with physical or to do with
Yeah,
mental
yeah.
activity.
Well, let's leave it at
Okay.
that. My
Mhm.
guest today has been Imogen Ragone, an Alexander teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. I'll put a link to her website. And I think we'd both be very interested in others' experiences, either with I'm Not Thinking or My Mind's Free to Wander or whatever. Because to
Yeah.
me, this seems like an important couple of directions for people. Anyway, thank you so much, Imogen.
Thank you.